Okay, you can start.
Okay, so good afternoon, everyone. My name is Jesme, and today my partner and I will be presenting on interacting in teams and groups. So, before we get into the presentation, just to have a little icebreaker, I just wanted to ask if anyone can tell me, like, what are their initial thoughts when they hear the lecturer say, mention groups or group work, if anybody would like to respond, of course.
That
Okay.
you want to work alone, you don't want to work with in a group.
Yes, exactly. I think majority of us might feel like that, We might have thoughts like, oh, I don't want to work with people, I hope whoever I get paired up with, they're not lazy and that they do their part. I think we might have thoughts like that, right? So this is why we're doing a presentation in this chapter this evening. This chapter is going to examine group characteristics, group development, and member dynamics, and how members interact with each other and work together. It's going to emphasize leadership as a process rather than just a position, and it's also going to cover teamwork, collaboration, and the relational leadership model. So, what is a group? So, in this context of leadership, a group refers to three or more people interacting over time to reach a goal. Individuals in this group focus on sustained interaction and interpersonal communication in order to achieve this goal. So, what this means is that persons communicate and work together over a period of time, and they actively make contributions to the group in order to reach their common goals and whatnot. An example of a group would be your group assignments for all of your courses. So, moving on, there are three key dimensions of a group, which are purposes. Purposes tell us why the group exists. Structure, which tells us how relationships and roles of individuals are organized. And lastly, time, which tells us the duration term of the group's existence. So, purposes. There are many different purposes for a group's existence. They can be for friendship groups, which offer emotional support, or highly task focused groups, or even groups like business staff who offer products and services. Form follows function. Does anybody know where this statement come from? I'll probably just assume no. So this statement is actually an architectural principle coined by Louis Sullivan. It implies that an object's design and structure should be determined by its purpose. This principle has actually been adopted in various fields, and in this context of groups, it implies that a group's purpose should shape its structure and processes. Purposes also direct what rules, procedures, and outcomes are needed in the group. Structure. So, structure implies the mechanisms for how group members relate to each other. This can either be through formal or informal rules. There's a spectrum for group structure, which can range from informal settings, such as leaderless groups where group members get together but there's no formal leader, or there may be shared leadership all around the group where needed roles are shared among each participant, or formal settings where a leader is selected and is accountable for all the members. The leadership style can vary from highly autocratic, where they make all decisions and direct members to leaders who utilize relational leadership elements to engage and empower group members. There can also be, sorry, hold on. There can also be informal leaders who influence the group's processes due to their seniority, reputation, or personalities. I'm not sure if you guys recall that Stu had spoken about this in one of his classes. And an example of this would be the opinions of an individual in a group, the opinions of an individual in their final year of study might hold a lot of weight to a student who is only in their first year. because that first year student doesn't have the same experiences or level of seniority that that final year student may have. So they may really take into consideration what that individual is suggesting and saying. Moving on to time. So, as mentioned earlier, time refers to the duration of a group's existence. A group may be time limited, also referred to as task force or ad hoc committee, where it may meet for a specified amount of extended time to achieve a specific goal. Time limited groups have a short time frame, therefore, members must establish rapid rapport with each other, be active, and focus on their specific roles in order to complete assigned tasks. Some examples of time, limit, time limited groups are project based groups and fundraiser committees. Another type of group is ongoing groups. These can be committees, boards, or councils which focus on sustained support and continuous operations. These type of groups may face long-term challenges such as motivating members so they can stay focused on the group's purpose, as well as member turnover in order to bring in new members. Examples of these type of groups would be support groups or school book clubs. Group development. So every group goes through various stages of development. A classic model of these stages is forming, storming, norming, and performing, outlined by Bruce Tuckman, 1965. However, the model was later expanded in 1977 by Tuckman and Mary Ann Jensen, to include the adjourning stage. We'll have a look at these stages shortly, and it should be noted that if challenges arise in the group, members are able to revisit each stage to get through these challenges and issues. The first stage of group development is forming. At this stage, members are recruited and you may ask various questions such as when will we meet or how will we communicate, what information do we need, and so forth. And all of these questions lead to missions, goals, and meeting arrangements being clarified. You find out the purpose of the group, what is the goal, what's the end goal, and why this group was formed. Team building occurs, you get to know each other, and trust is established between members. Some strategies that can make the group successful at this stage are to be inclusive and empowering by ensuring all members are involved. So you ensure that all members have a chance to talk and interact and introduce themselves. Moving on to the storming stage. So at this stage, differences of opinions begin to surface as members assert individual needs and ideas. There may be arguing among members, power struggles and clashes, and a lack of role clarity or even competing for leadership. If the group is unable to come to unanimous agreement on shared goals and conflict arises, then there's a risk of collapse. I'm not sure if anyone has ever experienced this with a group and possibly want to share their experience. Has anyone ever experienced this and want to share like how they overcame this stage when working on a group assignment? Or no, that's okay. I personally haven't. Well, I'm only my second year, so I have not dealt with this yet. But usually, I think the best solution is just to approach the conflicts in a civil manner and try and talk it out and come to a unanimous agreement. At this stage can either be short and constructive, where members come to a clear direction of achieving their objectives, or it can end up being prolonged and the group may start to operate in an adversarial manner where two opposing sides develop. Some strategies to help resolve the stage quickly would be to understand the group's purposes and as well as to identify personal differences, reestablish roles, as well as conflict resolution to help improve trust between members. So once the group is able to get past these differences, we move on to the norming stage. So at this stage, this is where the group develops and it establishes a pattern of how it's going to get its tasks done. Certain informal or formal procedures are set, such as who reports what, who is involved with this, how meetings are conducted, and which tasks are assigned to each member. At this stage, there is a general sense of trust and confidence in member expectations. Intimacy and group identity strengthens as members begin to understand the culture of the group based on its shared behaviors and habits. For example, a group might organize to have a meeting and at a specific time and at specific times, sorry, and they might tend to start like about 10 minutes after that stated time because they want to just allow the members to interact and socialize with each other before they get into group business. Moving on to the fourth stage is performing. So the strong foundation the group built from the previous stages allows it to reach a stage of maturity and equilibrium where the work gets done efficiently. This foundation is built on trust, clear goals, and established processes. Time limited groups must quickly get to the stage in order to meet objective deadlines. However, they still need to work through all the previous stages before this stage in order to build that necessary foundation because they can't skip all these stages and just jump to performing. They need to go through all the issues and all the trials and challenges and differences and they need to go through all of that. But however, they have a deadline, so they need to try to go through those stages a little quicker as compared to ongoing groups. Ongoing groups would need periodic renewal to stay effective, so these groups would have a constant cycle of revisiting each stage. When new members join, they would revisit the forming stage. When new issues arise, they revisit the storming stage. Or when new processes are necessary, they will go back to the norming stage. The fifth and final stage of the expanded model is the adjoining stage. So Tuckman and Jensen added this stage to acknowledge the importance of bringing closure to a group and to address the emotional aspects. All short-term groups such as task force or ad hoc committees have to plan their eventual disbandment once their purposes are fulfilled. And even ongoing groups may experience this stage if their purpose is no longer relevant. At this stage, members should recognize their accomplishments for successfully achieving their goals, as well as reflect on what processes might have been effective or ineffective. During this stage, members tend to feel a sense of loss or anger at the group's closure, as well as parting from the friendships they might have developed. And something that may help with these feelings are to have celebrations to allow members to share their goodbyes. Ongoing groups must ensure continual revisiting of the cycle to prevent it from reaching this stage. If they do not maintain new members or keep up with the current issues or needs, then they may not be able to continue performing. So this is a breakdown of each of the stages in the process. It more or less mentions everything that I already explained. However, I felt like it was nice to have a visual representation of what the performance level is like at each stage. So as you can see, at the well, the performance level starts at the forming stage. However, at the storming stage, performance is typically low, and this would be due to all the challenges that may arise at this stage, such as conflict and differences in opinions. Sorry, performance then picks back up going into the norming stage, and then it peaks at the performing stage, as this is where members are now more independent and they have trust in each other to effectively complete their tasks. And while at the adjourning stage, the performance breaks away. You see the broken line, and that is that. So we'll now move on to group dynamics. So group dynamics refer to the study of a group's life It includes processes such as how the group makes decisions, handles conflicts, and meets its leadership needs. It examines how communication patterns shape the behavior of members. Healthy dynamics enable the group to support effective decisions and influences member relationships. So, an important foundation of group dynamics, next slide. An important foundation of group dynamics would be to understand that members' communication patterns may indicate the roles that they tend to adopt. So there are two types of roles, task force and group building roles. So task roles focus on content and achieving the goals of the group. So this role would include actions such as giving information and opinions, summarizing information to help the group proceed, as well as using decision-making strategies. Group building roles are actions that primarily focus on the individuals of the group, such as maintaining relationships, cohesion, and boosting self-esteem. However, both roles are essential for a group to function as effective as it can. Individual and dysfunctional roles. So there may be scenarios where group members may actually disrupt the group's progress, and this would be known as dysfunctional roles. Some people tend to adopt these type of roles. Some examples are the special interest pleader, and this is an individual who persistently pushes their point even as the group is just ready to move on and proceed to its next step. It almost seems like they're prioritizing their own hidden agenda over the group's overall goals. Next is the blocker. This individual may resist or block any progress action in the group by being negative or disagreeing with almost every opinion without any valid reason. We also have the clown. This person is just constantly joking around and slacking off. They aren't taking the group work seriously and doing what they have to do. And lastly, there's the non participant. And this is generally someone who's not engaging in the group's discussions and they aren't actively listening or paying attention. I think I have come across some of these dysfunctional roles so far, mostly the non-participant, but you just have to try your best to work with it. However, it should be noted that we should distinguish between healthy disagreements and dysfunction. So what I mean by this is that someone who uses humor to ease tension would not be considered the same as someone who is a clown and that person is just joking around all the time, they're not taking anything serious. Someone who expresses disagreement out of concern for the group's progress shouldn't be confused with a blocker, and so forth. So each person in a group has a preferred role set that they are usually most comfortable with. Someone might feel more comfortable seeking opinions from other members, or others may prefer to ensure that everyone has shared their thoughts and ideas. A group needs both task and group building roles to perform effectively, and generally, members should contribute the roles that they perform best in. However, although members and leaders may not perform comfortably in every role, it is important to know which roles need to be filled in the group to succeed. And you should encourage someone to engage in that role. Whether they perform comfortably in it or not, someone should fill the role. A good balance of tasks and group building rules helps strengthen the outcome of the group's performance. So I hope you guys can see these two tables, but these are just some examples of task and group building rules. In the task rules, you have the information seeker. This person understands that the group needs more facts and information before it can proceed to make any important decisions. The opinion seeker would be someone who needs more ideas and opinions from the other members, ensuring that everyone has had a chance to express themselves. The opinion giver is someone who shares their knowledge and opinions relevant to the group's discussions. The summarizer is an individual who pulls together all the major opinions and discussions from the group and they condense it into a short report for clarity. And the clarifier would be someone who would focus on clarifying communication and ideas in order to ensure that all the members understand what's going on. Moving on to the group building rules. Firstly, we have the gatekeeper. This person focuses on facilitating communication from every member. They ensure each member has a chance to contribute to the discussion. Next is the encourager. This person would foster a positive atmosphere by inviting all individuals and diverse ideas. This person would motivate and empower each member in order to make sure that everyone feels included, that nobody feels like they're being left out or excluded. Then we have the mediator. They would harmonize conflict by helping parties identify issues at hand, as well as developing various solutions to the conflict. And then lastly, there's the follower. This would be someone who actively listens and they support the group's actions and decisions. Can anyone tell me what role they think they usually adopt when doing group work? I think I usually adopt the information seeker role because I just generally like to ensure that we have correct information before we head into making final decisions. I don't know if anybody would want to say what role they think they adopt. Anyone? Okay, that's okay.
I think I'll be clarifier rule more clarity.
Okay, yeah. Okay, thank you for that. Okay, so group norms now. So, group norms are the rules of conduct that guide the behaviors and practices of members in a group. They can be formal or informal. So, some norms may be explicit, such as Robert's Rules of Order. This is a parliamentary procedure that sets specific guidelines for conducting a meeting. I can't remember the entire procedure, but it's a very strict procedure for how the meeting should take place. Or they may be through cultural practices such as following a meeting agenda, arranging chairs in a circle for meetings, celebrating birthdays, and so forth. Group norms shape the group's climate and personality. So, group climate. A group you're in can be easygoing, flexible, and supportive, as well as the members may use humor often, while another group can be formal, guarded, and distrusting. If you want your group to have a distinct climate or personality, then the group should consider what norms and practices it should adopt. The relational leadership model is designed to emphasize building strong, trusting relationships so that members can feel highly engaged and included. It prioritizes creating an environment where each member feels valued and heard and supported. Creative conflict. So, conflict typically arises in the storming stage, as we know, of group development, and this can stall a group's progress if it is not resolved. Unresolved conflict can create a climate that is tense and hostile. However, conflict can also be effective in improving the group's performance. Some individuals may avoid conflict due to discomfort, and they may tend to just pretend like it doesn't exist or it isn't important for the sake of wanting to maintain harmony. However, you really shouldn't do this because the tension will always be there. The best thing to do is just to resolve the issues. Leaderships today view conflict as a natural and essential part of group growth. Some sources of conflict. There are various reasons why conflict will arise in a group. The most common one would be personality clashes. And we know that each person has their own unique personality and behavioral traits. And, sometimes you just simply won't mesh with every person you meet due to these differences. However, the most important thing that you can do is focus on listening to members and understanding them. Another reason is role conflict, which can occur due to unclear or conflicting expectations of responsibilities and roles and who's doing what. The best way to handle this would be to understand how your assumptions of your roles, as well as your expectations of the other members, might clash with their assumptions. It's better to have this understanding and discuss it within the group to just clear up any confusions and get that out of the way. Lastly, there's idea conflict, which is also called controversy, and this would occur due to differences in opinions about goals, methods, and strategies. It is best to handle this civilly with open dialogue. So, when confronting conflict, there can be various outcomes, and in order to get the best outcome, you really should use negotiation and mediation strategies rather than power strategies. These strategies can produce various outcomes, such as win win outcomes. With this outcome, both parties' differences are heard and are satisfied with the resolution decisions, and from this, the group tends to emerge stronger than before. In a win lose outcome, one side dominates the discussion by using power strategies to outtalk or maybe put down the other side, and as a result, a loser is created, and that loser would develop feelings of alienation and resentment, and this can threaten the group's harmony and leave members feeling excluded. In a lose lose outcome, both parties would use power strategies and they would end up standing so firm and rigid on their opinions that there's no resolution. They couldn't come to an agreement on anything, and that's probably when other actions would have to happen where they might have to switch out members from the group or something like that because they just can't come to a solution. Relational leadership and conflict. The relational leadership models recognize conflict as a natural and inevitable process. It encourages inclusive and empowering processes for resolution, as it is expected that when great individuals come together, there's inevitably going to be differences in opinions and strategies. Everybody's going to have their own opinion and they're going to have their own way of wanting to go about doing things. The group should establish ground rules or norms to guide open and honest dialogue to raise issues in case such possible conflict arises. These ground rules can help create a safe environment for differences to be expressed. Some examples of ground rules could be that the group members could agree that everyone will have a chance to express themselves and that no member should interrupt another while they are talking. Those could be some examples of ground rules that could be set. So, conflict actually comes with advantages and liabilities. The first advantage is that conflict can increase motivation and energy. So, conflict can actually push people to want to work harder and care more about solving the issues at hand rather than just avoiding it and leaving it there to ruin the relationship of the group. It can clarify issues and positions. Conflict can help everyone understand what's going on and where they stand in terms of role assignments and who's doing what. It can build internal cohesiveness and esprit de corps. I hope I'm pronouncing that correct. This is a French phrase and it is used to describe the morale of a group. So essentially, conflict, facing these challenges and these conflicts can help the group to feel more united and it can bring the members together. It can lead to innovation and creativity. Different opinions can spark new ideas and better solutions. So, the initial idea that the group was arguing about, that conflict can actually lead the members to come up with a new idea that everybody would agree on. It can increase self awareness, so conflict can help people see their own strengths and values more clearly. Maybe a means of dealing with internal conflicts. It can help people confront or resolve their own personal and emotional traumas. And lastly, it can lead to new synthesis of ideas or methods. So, what this means is that combining the opposing views of the parties can actually create new and better outcomes for the group. Some liabilities will be conflict can be debilitating, meaning that it can be energy draining and make individuals feel exhausted or stressed. It can distract from goal achievement, so disagreements can lead to individuals losing focus and sight on what the group's goal and purposes are. They lose focus on why this group was formed in the first place. What is the purpose of this? It can cause defensiveness and rigidity, so individuals may stop listening and refuse to compromise. It can cause distortions of reality, meaning the high emotions and tensions that come with conflict can make members misunderstand or exaggerate issues. This might make members think that the issue is bigger than what it really is, and it might drama. Okay, I don't. It might make the issue like seem more dramatic than what it actually is. That's what that means. It often becomes a negatively reinforcing cycle. So the more individuals argue or stay upset, then the worse the conflict or the member relationships can get. It tends to escalate and proliferate. So small disagreements can develop into bigger and more complex issues. Efforts to resolve are often not reciprocated, and this means that sometimes you would have one party wanting to try to fix things. However, the other party they don't want to cooperate. They just want to stick to their views and their opinions, and there's no resolution. Okay, so that's the end of my part, and I will now be passing on to Alyssa.
So, good afternoon, everyone. I will be taking over the second half of interacting in teams and groups. So, to begin, I would start with group decision making. Traditional leadership and decision making. Leaders often make final decisions because of time constraints and minimal issues. The relational leadership models encourages leaders to consider if the decisions being made aligns with the group's goals. So, in many organizations, it's common for a formal leader to make the final decisions, especially when there's limited time or the issue is not very significant. However, the relational leadership model, it usually encourages leaders to think carefully before deciding alone. Leaders should ask themselves these questions. Does this decision support the group's overall vision and mission? Have I included the opinions of my group members? And should I slow down the process to involve others? This model promotes thoughtful and inclusive decision making even when the leader has the authority. So, moving on to participative leadership. Involving group members in decision making, it usually leads to better decisions and stronger commitment. Instead of viewing participation as something the leader grants, it is more effective to see group involvement as a right. This can create a tension between leader authority and group expectations, but it reflects modern organization values. So, participative leadership is about involving others in the decision making. Research shows that the decisions tend to be better and more accepted when people affected by the decision have a voice in the process. Instead of seeing participation as something a leader allows, it's more accurate to view the group's involvement as a right they have. While this can create tension between the leader's authority and the group's desire to be involved, It reflects changing expectations in workplaces and communities. So, more and more people basically want to have a say in the decisions that will obviously affect them. Moving on to decision making. Decision making ranges from autocratic, this means the leader decides alone, to delegation, which means the leader fully shares decision power. The more the group participates, the greater their influence and acceptance of the decision. So according to leadership expert Yuko, decision making falls on a spectrum. So on one end there's autocratic, and then on the other end there's delegation, and in between are consultation and joint decision making. Generally, the more influence the group has, the higher their acceptance and commitment to the final decision. So moving on to methods of decision making. Decisions can be made by authority without discussion, expert opinion, averaging members' views, authority after discussion, or majority vote. And relational leadership favors consensus, which is full agreement or support, whenever possible to promote unity and commitment. So from another model from Johnson and Johnson, right? While each model has its place, relational leadership usually encourages teams to strive for consensus whenever possible. And this means the whole group supports the decision, not just a simple majority. This builds trust and unity. Consensus decision making. Consensus means all group members support the decision and are willing to implement it, even if it's not everyone's first choice. This process it takes longer but produces stronger commitment and benefits from diverse perspectives. Successful consensus it requires respectful dialogue, trust, active listening, and conflict management. And not every decision needs full group input, only those requiring high quality and broad acceptance. So for decisions that need the high quality and broad acceptance, consensus is ideal. But for routine or minor decisions, smaller groups or individuals may decide to save time. So before I continue, can someone tell me what is a team, or what do you understand by being in a team?
Working with
Okay,
other people.
okay, good. So let's see. What is a team? A team is more than a group. It's a unit with shared goals, trust, and collaboration. Teams achieve more together than individuals working alone. And metaphors like sports team or communities help us understand how teams function. So, like in sports, even if each player is a superstar, they won't succeed unless they operate as a unit. This idea carries over to hospitals, businesses, and schools, where teamwork usually improves morale, support, and results. Just like an ensemble in music, everyone plays a unique role, but they all contribute to one performance. Moving on to groups versus teams. So below working groups, we have strong leader guides all work, focus on individual task, individual accountability, short task-based meetings, and rewards are individual. And then below teams, we see shared leadership responsibilities, shared team goals and outcomes, both team and individual accountability, collaborative discussions and problem solving, and team efforts celebrated together. So, before I start to discuss the information shown in the table, can anyone point out the obvious while working in groups versus teams from what I just read? Okay, so Not every group is a team, right? While both involve interaction, teams have a deeper level of connection, shared identity, and interdependence. So this table shows the differences. Teams share leadership and responsibility, and meetings are more interactive and productive. Everyone contributes and celebrates success together. But in contrast, working groups tend to be more individualistic. So moving on to the characteristics of effective teams. Clear goals and shared purpose. Then we have trust and mutual respect, open and frequent communication, recognition of each member's strengths, willingness to try new things, humor and support in high pressure moments. So these qualities usually build a strong and resilient team. So what makes a team truly effective? Here we see trust, communication, shared goals, and a willingness to be flexible and try new things. It's also about understanding each other's strengths, supporting each other, and even using humor to ease tension. And as it says, these qualities build a strong, resilient team. Moving on to types of teams. So we have three types. Functional teams. These are well organized and it has a clear structure. So for example, our school departments. Then we have self-directed teams. They work independently and members have skills to complete goals. And number three, we have cross-functional teams. So these are diverse skill sets where members from different departments come together. So for example, when Apple develops a new product, they might bring together designers, engineers, and even marketers, but its goal is to develop one product. Smart goals and teams. So, not the literal word smart, but SMART goals is a useful framework for setting goals. So, each letter represents something different. S specific, we have clear and understandable. M measurable, can track progress. Then we have attainable, realistic and achievable. Relevant, it's aligned with team or the organization goals. And then time bound, which is deadline driven. So, to stay focused, teams need clear goals. So, the SMART framework helps with that. Goals should be as listed: specific, measurable, attainable, relevant, and time bound. For example, responding to all emails within 24 hours about an upcoming event is a SMART goal. Because why? It's clear, it's tractable, and it has a deadline. So this is just a visual representation of each letter. When you set goals and the SMART has different meanings to it. Moving on to team learning. So what is team learning? Traditional learning is individual, where you would study, write, or take a test alone. But in groups with shared responsibility, team learning must take place. The learning units of organization are teams. And team learning isn't accidental, it is more intentional and structured. So, normally in school, we usually focus on individual learning, where you would do your own assignments. Once it's individual assignments, most of the times you study alone and obviously you take a test by yourself. But when a group has shared goals or tasks, learning needs to happen at the team level. As it is said that in organizations, teams, not individuals, are the real learning units. So for a team to truly learn, the process needs to be intentional and not just by chance. So how does team learning happens? It usually occurs through dialogue and reflection on shared experiences. Dialogue is more than talking. It usually includes the tone, emotion, and effort to understand. Team members must be aware of how they communicate, not only what they say. And understanding norms for communication is key to avoid conflict. So, moving along, we have dialogue versus discussion. So, below dialogue, we see there's shared learning and reflection. It seeks understanding, it encourages clarity and connection, and it strengthens group bonds. And below discussion, we see sharing personal views, can lead to debate or conflict, often tries to persuade, and it may also weaken relationships. So a lot of teams think they're having dialogue, but they're really just having discussions where everyone is focused on getting their own point across. So dialogue is different. It's about listening to understand, not debating to win. It helps the team build shared meaning and it prevents relationships from falling apart. So the quote, don't just do something, stand there, reminds us to pause and listen before reacting. So to note, the main idea is that team learning must be intentional. Teams need to engage in dialogue and reflection and create a culture of open, respectful communication. When teams learn together, they become stronger, more connected, and more capable of handling challenges. So now we move on to implications in team learning. Leaders and commanders, but supporters and partners. Good leaders facilitate learning, not only task. They encourage one, self-awareness, open-mindedness, collaboration, and shared responsibility. So in a productive team, leaders aren't seen or they shouldn't be seen as bosses or people giving orders. As it is said, it describes them more as supporters and partners. Their role is to help the team learn and grow, not just to get tasks done. A good leader helps people reflect, understand their own motivations, and listen to others. This creates a space where everyone can contribute meaningfully. Moving on to reflection and shared ownership. So everyone, including leaders and participants, must process group experiences together. Teams should reflect on what didn't work to what did work, and reflection builds shared learning, growth, and trust. So another important point, often teams focuses only on fixing mistakes, but we also need to study our successes. Why did something work well? What did we do right as a team? So, reflecting on both failures and the successes, it usually helps the team grow, improve, and trust each other more over time. Moving on to team leadership. So, here we have team leadership balances performance, which is achieving goals, and development by building relationships and cohesion. Effective teams perform better in creativity, decision making, innovation, and resource management. Many teams fail due to poor leadership. So, as stated here, we will understand that team leadership it isn't just about directing others, but it's mainly about balancing two important areas: team performance and team development. While performance is about meeting goals and solving problems, development is about building trust, relationships, and team spirit. When both are strong, teams excel at innovation, creativity, and decision making, as listed. But when leadership is weak, even the most talented teams can fail. Moving on to characteristics of strong team leadership. So here we have 8 Short and simple characteristics. Number one, it's clear, elevating goals, results driven structure, competent team members, unified commitment, collaborative climate. Then we have high standards of excellence, principled leadership, and eight, external support and recognition. So these traits lay the foundation for trust, clarity, and momentum. Moving on to leadership actions in teams. Leaders must monitor progress and relationships. They step in when conflict or stagnation occurs, and they also mediate, coach, or they would refocus the group. In mature teams, leaders step back to let members lead. So, what does that mean? So, being a team leader, it also means knowing when to act and when to step back. Leaders monitor the group's progress and they only intervene when necessary, especially during conflict or when the team hits a wall. Mature teams often need less intervention because they can self manage. A good leader adapts to what the group needs in the moment. Now, moving on to four key team design components. So here we have task structure, which is the task is meaningful and team has autonomy. Then we have group boundaries, the right size and diverse skill sets. Norms, agreed upon behavior guidelines, so guidelines for how we would work together as a team. And four, we have authority, balance of leader control and team empowerment. This is by allowing shared power while maintaining direction when needed, and it is by getting these elements right in the beginning sets the team up for long-term success. So here's a short summary of the chapter interacting in teams and groups, and it says this chapter explored how groups develop into effective teams through clear goals, structure, and timelines. It outlined the stages of development, showing how each stage builds trust, manages conflict, and strengthens collaboration. It emphasized the roles members play, the importance of group norms, and how they shape the team's climate. Conflict was presented as a natural and valuable part of teamwork when managed well. While we engage in many types of groups, not all function as true teams. Building strong, effective teams takes intention, planning, and continuous learning. And it is essential to create thriving communities of practice. And then my colleague would have added a quote from Henry Ford, who's an American industrialist and business magnate, and it says, coming together is a beginning, keeping together is a progress, and working together is a success. So, this concludes our presentation today. I hope each of you would have taken something valuable and remember the importance of interacting in teams and groups. Thank you.